Well, it is that time once again for myself personally. One of my favorite parts of the SSL calendar. It is the Simulation Soccer League Prospect Draft. Hello, everyone. I am Metafiction, and as always, I am joined by our Commissioner Candidates.
Hello.
And honestly, this is, as you all are probably aware, this is probably the biggest class we've had, certainly in a while, possibly ever, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe the season 1 and one of the later drafts or later classes after that was a bit higher, but it's very close. It's definitely one of the largest draft classes we've seen in the past 2 years, I think, at least.
And certainly a lot of players that are going to be finding out which organization they'll be joining for at least the first 2 seasons of their rookie contract. It's always an exciting time seeing all of these new users or returning users or recreating users in a lot of cases joining or rejoining the league, and it's just so fascinating to see it all shake out.
And since we have this big of a draft class, this draft is going to be a bit more efficient than we've seen the previous draft streams, I guess you would call it, going. So we have a I don't know if you've heard like these audiobooks from when you were a kid, and there was something that said, when you hear this signal, it's time to turn to the next page. This is essentially what we are going to do in this draft stream as well. We're going to try to keep things efficient, and when you hear that signal, it is about time to look for the next draft pick.
And it also serves as a signal for me because anyone who has listened to my commentary on drafts or even on match days will know I am very prone to rambling. And so I will do my best to try and keep it a little bit tighter than usual just because we have so many names to get through. But we are going to try and keep this moving as quickly as we can. So if we end up not really getting to say a lot about each individual player, we apologize, but we do want to make sure that we can get through this in a reasonable time frame.
The draft board that you see in front of you right now consists of the current draft picks for each organization in the first 4 rounds. There are going to be picks made after the 4th round because of the sheer size. Unfortunately, that is not shown on the draft board such as this, so we will have to go through them in the images in the slides that we will see later on. A full summary will be shown on the SSL forum, so you will be able to see the full list of all the draft picks and all the rounds after the fact. We will also see some trades, as the current owners that are shown on the screen right now might not be the owners, at least not before the draft started. So we will have some trades to announce as well during the draft. But I guess everyone is waiting for the first overall pick. We have União Sao Paulo, who unfortunately went there or finished last in the major league standings last season, or this season rather, but we'll have the honor to pick first in S18 SSL Prospect Draft. And with their first selection, they select Julian Rubio, the user Donut.
Well, a lot of people had Donut going in the early reaches. A lot of people had it going number 1, and indeed União Sao Paulo making Julian Rubio the first player off the board. This player is a very pacey striker who will try to beat you on the offside trap, and also can get around the keeper to try and ease their ability to finish. A lot of investment early on in the physical stats. You see there 18 in acceleration and pace. Certainly going to be very physically gifted. Plenty of time to work on the mental and technical aspects as well. But certainly a very strong pick for União Sao Paulo, and certainly they are going to need as much help as they can. It has been a bit of a rough couple of seasons for them, but every pick they make get a little bit better. So we're glad to see that continue here.
For sure. And we also see a bunch of draft render graphics. The second season where we have those as part of the draft stream. And I would like to take this moment to thank Jovi, North the Greatest Showman, Squid, and Zeagle for creating these renders and these images that we use to see that player in action a bit more than we've done before.
Absolutely, it's just such an incredible addition to these draft streams. I'd also like to point out North posted a trailer for the draft just a little bit earlier today. If you haven't seen that, I encourage that you do. It's very well edited. It's very hype. Thank you so much for that as well, North. But yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to everybody who contributed graphics and helped make this draft stream the best it could possibly be.
Coming up next, we have the second overall selection, and that is Catalunya, who finished 7th in the Major League standings. And as you can understand, we have the reverse order of the Major League standings as the determinant for the pick order in this prospect draft. But CF Catalunya selects second overall Ben Nelson, the user Ben.
Well, certainly I've said before that I very much respect players who will play a little more withdrawn roles, such as a central defensive midfielder, which is what Nelson is here. Certainly, again, we see a lot of investment in the physical attributes, 17 acceleration, 16 pace, but a lot of well-distributed points into those physical stats, agility, balance, etc. It's going to be physicality, of course, we've established so important in the SSL. As far as I can tell, based on the distribution of attributes and the traits displayed, this is going to be a very deep-lying playmaker who is going to be linking up the defense and the midfield and attack very efficiently. I think this is a solid pick for Catalunya's soul, and certainly excited to see how this plays out for them.
Catalunya has been a team that has had these dominant central midfielders, for a long time, and Nelson joins a great group of players, and hopefully can develop to be among them in a couple of seasons as well. 3 overall is CA Buenos Aires, and they select Daryl McManus, the user Cake307.
I apologize, I'm still pulling up the player here. Here we go. Yes, Cake307, another one of those players that was expected to go very high in this draft, and judging by the attributes, it very much shows. Surprisingly, not as much investment in acceleration and pace as some of their classmates, but they make up for that by being very well versed in the mental aspects. 15 work rate, 14 vision, 13 teamwork, all of these very important attributes for a central midfielder. And midfielders are always so much more difficult to build just because there's so much that they need. So it's a very encouraging start to have them be working on a number of different fronts at first. A lot of investment into this. You'll love to see it.
And we have Omniscious as well joining us on the cast here.
Hello, sorry about that. How are you guys? It's
Cannot complain.
Yeah, so this looks like a good pick, and you know what? I think a central midfielder that dictates tempo and has killer balls, mixed with their 14 passing and vision. You know, I know you're talking about lack of maybe pace and acceleration compared to their teammates, but I feel like this player could be, you know, one of those deep line playmakers that doesn't necessarily run a lot, but a lot of the passes go through them. You know, they're receiving the ball the most, passing the ball the most, and kind of like dictating the team's, you know, tempo and their style of play.
Absolutely.
Could potentially be a player to build a team around, you know. and all.
Absolutely. And pace is an important stat, but it's not the only important stat. So certainly many different play styles, and as you say, dictating the tempo is going to be one of McManus's strong suits. Look forward to see how he fits into this Buenos Aires Athenai organization.
And you cannot end this commentary without commenting on his mullet. That was one of the one of the aspects of the scouting conversation that was emphasized heavily. This player has a mullet.
Yeah, honestly, no, not gonna lie, I love the mullet, the old school mullet, bringing it back.
It does have a certain old school vibe, I will give it that.
Moving on to 4th overall, we have Hollywood FC. Hollywood that a couple of draft classes ago drafted an entire team, an entire roster, and they're back at it again. With 4 overall, Hollywood selects Thomas Hohenhan, North the Greatest Showman.
Well, this is a user that has been very involved in Discord. As I mentioned, North created that trailer for this draft, which was pretty phenomenal, I must say. So this bodes very well for Hollywood, as they are getting a very active player who is going to, by all accounts, be very... this build is very interesting for me. We'll be looking to get into that area. 16 acceleration, 13 pace is a little low, but nevertheless, certainly a lot of 14 off the ball as well. I want to draw attention to, because off the ball is such an important an attribute for attacking players. So you can trust this player to get to where they need to go into the best possible position to finish their chances.
Yeah, actually, I agree with the off ball. I notice sometimes when people maybe new to FM are making a striker, they put like high positioning in their striker, but it's actually off ball you want, because positioning, is more when their position when the team doesn't have the ball, whereas off ball is like their positioning when their team has the ball. So as a striker, it's off ball is probably, in my opinion, one of the most important stats.
I completely agree with that, especially for an attacking player. Whenever you come forward, you need to know that your teammates are going to be getting themselves in the best possible areas, and the higher your off the ball is, the more likely your player is going to do that. So, kudos for investing in that, and certainly looking forward to seeing how this goes. We know Hollywood like to integrate their rookies, their younger players, into the first team setup, so we'll have to see how this pans out.
I would also like to point out that they have 15 composure, and it kind of shows, as they have 17 goals, but only 10.68 xg. So that means, an average striker is only going to score 10 to 11 goals with the number of chances that he had. But because he's so clinical and composed in front of net, he's actually able to score above average. Well above average, actually. That's almost twice the amount.
I believe Hohenhan was the second, or came second in the goal scoring race in the academy, with Julian Rubio actually winning with 18 goals. So definitely close here for the German giant in the academy goal scoring race. Moving on to pick number 5, we have Tokyo Sports Club coming up, and they select Charlie Chambers, the user Rich.
So I need to give my full disclosure. As an assistant manager for Tokyo SC Cairo City, I was, of course, involved in this pick. That said, it seems like a fairly no-brainer at this point. Rich is... Some of you will know Rich from the podcast series he's been doing with some of the more prominent SSL figures, myself included, as well as Candidates, I believe. And I believe there were a couple of others. Unfortunately, they aren't coming to mind. But as a player, Charlie Chambers is a very solid pick, probably the best central defender on the board, unless I'm mistaken. That jumping reach and that strength means he's going to be very difficult to beat in the air, along with 14 heading. It is going to be a uh, very important addition to that Tokyo back line. They did seem to have a little bit of trouble getting rid of set pieces over the last couple of seasons, so this will hopefully shore up that aspect of their defense.
Yeah, and I mean, also a 15 acceleration. This is the type of center back that can play really well on a high line. And in my opinion, I think a center back as one of your top picks is probably um, even better than picking a striker because there's a lot of strikers, but there's only a few center backs. And getting the best center back um, and having that center back, potentially, be a long-term part of your team, you know, I personally think that, defense wins championships. And there's a lot of good strikers, a lot of strikers with high GPE, but in terms of central defenders, I think it's a lot more rare. Also, too, this is a center back that scored 5 goals. So you're gonna get goals with the center back as well. They we were mentioning the 16 jumping reach and 14 heading. So even though you're gaining a center back, you're also gaining a goal scorer and a potential set piece monster.
I
No
believe
doubt,
all of those goals came from corners. So definitely a set piece giant here for Chambers. Moving on to the 6th overall pick, we have a trade first to announce. So in this trade, see, get the screen correctly. There we go. We have a trade between Hollywood and AC Romana. AC Romana sends their first round pick in the S18 Prospect Draft, 6 overall, to Hollywood for a second round pick, the Sao Paulo second round pick, 9th overall, and 2 Hollywood 4th and 5th round picks, so 28 and 36 overall. So Hollywood pays a couple of picks to move up 3 spots from 9 overall. Looks like they are trying to find someone special here.
Indeed, Hollywood had been trying to find an opportunity to trade up for at least a pick or two, and they did finally find a partner in Romana. They did pay a bit of a steep price, so odds are it's somebody that they really, really wanted to try and make sure that they secure. As for Romana, this is a great trade. They only move back 3 spots and pick up spots in the 4th and 5th rounds, which, with this class being as big as it is going to be extremely good value. So I think this was a no-brainer for Romana, and Hollywood now have their pick of the remaining players.
And with that 6th overall selection, they select Alex Calderon, the user Amidchips.
Well, I said earlier that Rich was probably the best center back in the class. In truth, it's about 50-50 between him and this player. Obviously, central defenders, as Omniscious pointed out, is such a more rare position to find, so you want to make sure that you find a good one wherever you can. This was a little bit different to Chambers in terms of build. Excuse me. But nevertheless, certainly high investment in composure and concentration and positioning, and is going to be very, very focused, going to once again shore up that back line for Hollywood. I think the trade up makes sense here to make sure that they get one of the elite central defenders in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really rare to see young defenders, with this kind of composure. And I think, maybe a different build, maybe not gonna score as many goals as a defender, and be a set piece, specialist. But I think, with their mental stats, and they're still 14 acceleration, 14 pace, they'll be able to play, potentially first division. If not, we'll be able to definitely start in the minor leagues and potentially play in like a high line, high press system. Because in my opinion, that's one of the things with like center backs. If you have two slow center backs or like something like that, and you play high line, that can be, especially if the other striker is really fast, you're basically setting yourself up for a long night. So it's
Absolutely.
definitely a great to come straight into the league already able to like keep up with the pace or close to with like the strikers in the league.
And once again, Hollywood investing in the young players with Hohenhan and Calderon now. They are once again primed to add to what is already a very young and dynamic roster. Certainly a bit of a disappointing season in majors last time out. We'll be looking to bounce back in a big way this coming season.
And for those of you in the SSL Discord, we had a bingo card that was sent out where you could select different players in this draft class and check them off as they were picked during this stream. And we actually got a bingo after pick number 6. The bingo card was a 5x5, so definitely an efficient bingo creator there, or bingo card creator. And it's North, the Greatest Showman, who picked everyone in the top 5 except Ben Nelson. So they got a bingo now with the pick number 6 here.
What if I'm out of curiosity, what exactly was the prize for that? Was the prize even?
There was no prize. It was just something fun that they created, and we just went with it. So definitely something that we might look into having in the future. I don't know. It looked kind of cool. So maybe it will see a return in a more official capacity next season. I'm not saying anything, but we'll talk about it. So that was pick 6, and 7th overall we have the cup winners of the SSL Cup, Schwarzwälder Fußballverein, making their first selection in this season's draft. And they have selected Dina Skovgard, the user Ramen Amen.
Well, there were, as people know, 4 of the Skovgard siblings making their SSL debuts in this draft. Dina apparently is the first one off the board. A lot of people were expecting the Skovgards to essentially be the first 4 picks, but nevertheless, Dina Skovgard represents a very strong choice at right back. As you say, SFB were the cup winners, were runners-up in the league. Certainly going to be looking. Tamana Whittington, their right defender, is still in the prime. This is, I can only imagine, a succession plan for them. And they can certainly do a lot worse with 18 acceleration, 16 pace, and certainly very high decisions and positioning as well. We'll be getting forward to make those fullback runs that I love so very much. And also, I like to point out the inclusion of the curls ball trait, which is certainly an interesting choice, but it could also help to get crosses into positions that otherwise might not be reachable. So, a curious decision, but one that I do very much enjoy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, with 18 acceleration and 16 pace, in a position that arguably requires the most running, this is going to be a fun player to watch. And I think also too, a lot of times you think with pace merchants that they're terrible decision makers, but Dina actually has 14 decision making, so you have a fast, pacey wingback that also is actually going to make good decisions on the ball.
And it cannot be overstated how important that is, for sure. If I had one quibble with this build thus far, it's that their work rate is only at 10, and people who have watched past drafts will know how highly at least I personally, and I would assume FM as well, values the work rate attribute. So I would like to see a little bit more investment in that going forward. But certainly for a draftee, this is a very exciting pick for SFE.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the work rate. Especially if like I was saying, this position requires arguably the most running, aka going to be covering the pitch the most. So if you had a higher work rate, arguably you're going to do the job a lot better.
And we are at the last pick of the first round, and it is the league champions, Reykjavik United, who is coming up next. Reykjavik winning the cup, not the cup, sorry, that would have been breaking their losing record in the cup, but no, they won the league, they won the major league, and their minor league affiliate, North Shore United, also won the minor league standings as well. Pick number 8, Reykjavik select Florian Geisberg, the user Zerg.
Well, as you say, Reykjavik North Shore is currently the organization to beat in the SSL, and this pick only solidifies that, in my opinion. Another central defensive midfielder, you love to see it. It's one of those positions that doesn't get a lot of love, but we've had 2 in the top 8 already. Florian Geisberg is a very interesting pick, I would say. Seems to be, as best I can tell on this first glance, is more of a defensive presence with higher positioning as opposed to off the ball, as we had talked about, but can certainly contribute further up the pitch with 13 acceleration. Certainly not the slowest player out there. It's going to be very interesting to see how they fit into this Reykjavik North Shore setup. The trying killer balls often does help to potentially give Geisberg a little bit of an edge in trying to get the ball linked between the defense and attack. So again, certainly going to be a very exciting addition to Reykjavik or North Shore in the coming seasons.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably my favorite position. And with the decision making and the anticipation, plus mixed with their high acceleration, that all like kind of does well to create like a good presence at the back to win balls back and then quickly counterattack. The tries killer balls often will help, especially. I know they didn't get an assist in the league, but they had an XG of 1.11, so I think they were unlucky that maybe some of their strikers just didn't happen to score. But yeah, it looks like a pretty promising defensive mid who can score himself. He'll arrive late, probably out right atop the box, getting any rebounds and such, and just putting them back in.
It's also worth noting, despite the low goal contributions, average rating of 6.99, just a hair under 7. That is very tricky for a defensively oriented position to achieve. So certainly doing something right in that academy tenure with Atletico Medellin. So going to be, as I say, certainly a very strong pick for this organization.
And that concludes the first round. We only have 8 organizations, and it's only 8 picks, so it's these rounds go by rather quickly. But don't fret, you don't have to be a first-round player in order to succeed in the league. There are plenty of opportunities for all players, even or no matter where you were picked. So let's just move on to the second round with AC Romana's first selection in this season's draft, which they traded with Hollywood, as we announced before. And Romana selects Rigby Emerson, the last Heraclid.
Well, sorry. Where you get, it sounded like you were about to say something.
No,
You
I
didn't mean to
mean the
talk over you.
username. It's I think the last Heraclid. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I do want to give bonus points for using Sun Hyung Min as the render. In case it wasn't obvious, I happen to like Sun Hyung Min a little bit, so uh, kudos for that. As for the player themselves, we had a very defensive focused first round, which we don't always see. So we now move back into the attacking sphere for this pick. Primary right winger will be playing a lot of 1-2s and trying to place shots in exactly the right position, and can do so with 16 finishing. It certainly not the paciest winger. You'd like to see a little higher than 13 acceleration and 10 pace if you're playing an attacking midfielder, but certainly always a lot of room to grow with that. And technically speaking, very sound. Again, 16 finishing, but also high dribbling and passing. So going to be facilitating a lot of chances and taking a lot of chances, as the 9 goals and 6 assists in academy play would dictate.
Yeah, I mean, they might not be the speediest player, but to be honest, they're quite well rounded. I mean, they don't necessarily outside of their finishing, they don't necessarily excel at anything, but they're not really bad at anything. And I think maybe that's why they found themselves to be so successful. I mean, they performed both above their XG and their XA. And I mean, with the way they play, playing 1-2s and placing their shots, all they really need is a little bit of space, and they can just place it, get it in the net. I don't think they necessarily need to be the quickest or best player. I think they just kind of are good enough at everything that they can just get in the right position at the right time and just put it in the net.
Certainly fair enough. And Romana will be, of course, looking for an heir apparent to the veteran Pascal Innovier, who retired at the end of this past season. They're hoping they have found a successor in Rigby Emerson.
We have our first team making their. No, we don't. We're not. Hollywood already made their 2 selections. But Catalonia is coming up with their second selection in this season's draft at 10 overall. Well, Omni, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, I guess so. CF Catalonia are drafting Budget Xavi. I mean, why? I mean, he's from the Catalonia system. His dad's a former coach of Catalonia. I think it was kind of destiny for him to come home and play where his dad coached, and where he kind of grew up playing himself. So yeah, I mean, he's a deep line playmaker. He has good passing, vision, and technique. So kind of the perfect player to play in the middle of the field, and maybe not the fastest or paciest guy, but has all of the abilities you would expect of someone that grew up in Barcelona and playing in the Catalonia academy system.
And I feel obligated to point out that the reason this pick is being made, and I don't know if this is something that you would want to discuss or if Candace would want to discuss, but there is a very specific reason this pick is being made here in the second round. If you want to elaborate on that, I'd be more than willing to see the floor.
Yeah. Well, because budget Xavi's dad, Johan Pep Hernandez, is coming back, and he's gonna help out as an assistant coach and coach Sol, and he's gonna coach his son and join the staff at Catalonia.
So we have the assistant manager pick, essentially, is the second round pick for any organization. To formalize it a bit more, maybe. So, Budget Xavi is coming back home to Catalonia at 10 overall. And at 11 overall, we have Buenos Aires making their second selection. And they select Bengt Rubin, the user Kenvald.
So, truth be told, I've never been especially aware of how to best use wide midfielders, but that is purely a personal quibble of mine. As far as the player itself goes, Bengt Ruben is going to be a very strong addition to Buenos Aires Atheni. Uh, 13 pace is a good start, 13 decisions, and 13 passing as well will contribute from those wide areas. Will dip deep to get back the ball and then carry it forward and try to make that killer pass either into the middle or further up the wing as the situation calls for. So, very exciting to see this winger contribute to Buenos Aires Atheni.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I also have the swing quibble because their other positions are left mid and right wing back, which are other positions I don't ever really use either. But their player is also kind of similar, um, in the sense that they're also extremely well balanced. I mean, as a winger, maybe their crossing could be a little bit better, but in terms of like a lot of their mental stats are pretty high, or like not necessarily high, but like they're not low. They have good positioning and good off ball, so they can help win the ball back, help be in position for the counterattack as well. So yeah, I mean a pretty good player.
And I do also want to draw attention 7 assists in academy play for Atletico Medellin, despite only 4.47 XA. That's telling me that Bengt Ruben is getting passes into the areas that a lot of players might not be able to. So that is an exciting stat for Buenos Aires, in my opinion. So, as I say, I think this is a very solid pick.
We're coming up halfway into the second round with Romana's second pick in this draft. And at 12 overall, AC Romana selects Andres Pedrillo, the user Anuragb.
Well, Pedrillo is going to be able to contribute pretty much anywhere in the central midfield, primarily as a central midfielder, but also as an attacking mid and a defensive mid. And that versatility is certainly very important for anybody playing in the center of the park. Very high passing and vision, going to be very skilled at facilitating attacking movements, 13 composure, as well as 12 decisions and 14 anticipation should be very strong mentally as well, which is very important coming out of the traps as a new player. I like the inclusion of both dictates tempo and tries killer balls off it. So this is going to be essentially Romana or Inter London's engine room in the center of midfield in under ideal conditions. So very strong pick.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm devastated because I didn't get to play with them in the academy, and they didn't get to come to Catalonia, and I think they're the only other Catalan in the entire draft. But they look like a really exciting player, kind of similar to Budget Xavi in that maybe a bit more attacking, but kind of that maybe more of an advanced playmaker, but definitely more of a playmaking type midfielder. Not necessarily gonna, come in tackling and then win the ball back and go box to box, but that type of player that when they get the ball, they're gonna try to create chances for their attacking players.
As we head into the second half of the second round, we're going to take a look at the draft overview while I'll make some changes on the back end here. Is there anything that stands out to either of you when it comes to the first 12 selections in the draft?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, a lot of people were predicting that all four of the Skavgard siblings would have gone, if not 1, 2, 3, and 4, at least all in the first round. So far, we've only seen Dina Skavgard taken at number 7 overall by SFB. I think is a little bit surprising, but I think that just speaks to the level of talent that we have in this draft. The number of active users that are eager to contribute to their teams. Certainly, certainly an exciting sight, I think. Also, I mentioned a lot of more defensive picks. We have 2 strikers, a central midfielder, and the rest are defensive midfielders or out and out defenders. Certainly, defenders at a bit more of a premium historically. So it does make sense that teams will want to call first dibs on the best defenders in the class.
Yeah, I personally think that either a striker or a defender is probably the usually the best way to use your first pick, because if ideally you get a top earning striker, they'll be like a top goal scorer in the league potentially. And I mean, you want to get a lot of goals. And on the other side of things, there are less defenders, specifically center backs, than there are probably strikers and probably midfielders as well, because people usually rather be scoring or getting assists, generally being shown in a positive way in highlights on the 3D engine. But realistically, having 2 strong center backs, especially, even having one's good, but 2, and that can help you win a cup or win a league title. So I think those 2 positions are the usually the best to build your team around. And then I can also see why there's a lot of, it looks like, not just center mids but a lot of defensive mids as well. And I think that's just kind of the same idea as like a defensive mid is usually the first one on to like break up a counter before it reaches the defensive midfielder. And nowadays the center back does pass quite a bit, but I still think that you can kind of use your defensive midfielder to help your team build from the back.
And with that, we're ready for the second half of the second round. And Tokyo is coming up with 13 overall. And they select Billy Bob, the user Billy Bob.
Well, there's a town with no name joke to be made here, but I'll be blasted if I can think of what it is. Nevertheless, this is a very strong pick here. Going with what Omni said about the central midfielders, I do have it on good authority that Billy Bob is hoping to be more of a roaming playmaker type, being able to dictate the tempo, to facilitate attacks from within the midfield, and certainly is very well set up to do so. 15 technique, 13 passing, 14 vision, a lot of attributes focused on making sure the ball gets where it needs to go. Going to be a huge factor in the center of the pitch for Tokyo, or in a pitch a little further forward or on the left wing. But certainly, I think this is a very good pick for Tokyo, being able to add a little bit more depth to that midfield.
Yeah, personally, I'm really excited because there was a time when Tri's Tricks was not an available player trait, and for so long, I really wanted it in the league. So I just get excited whenever I see any player that has it. And Billy Bob has 15 technique, and 13 dribbling, because I think technique actually is probably just as important, if not more important. So I'm hoping that maybe we see Billy Bob try some fancy stuff in the Sims moving forward.
For certain, going to be a very exciting player to watch work. Looking forward to seeing how Billy Bob acclimates to Tokyo and Cairo.
With the next pick, we see Romana again with another selection in this draft. And AC Romana at 14 overall select Daedalus Cronus, the user Laser.
Well, this is another one of the assistant manager picks. I don't know if we got into it earlier, but teams whose assistant managers recreate players, the teams must spend must spend a second rounder. There we go. Must spend a second round pick on that player.
Just to
So
clarify,
this
is not an assistant manager pick.
Oh, is it not?
No, it is not.
Well, I
Laser
apologize.
was the manager of Romana a couple of seasons ago, but is not.
Well, disregard everything I was just saying. I was working with outdated info. I apologize.
At least not as far as I'm aware. At least, so not an assistant manager pick.
Well, nevertheless, it's a strong pick in any regard for Romana. Laser, of course, does whether or not they are the assistant manager, as I had assumed, they do have a history with this organization, so the chemistry is already there. Once again, will be an imposing figure toward the middle of the pitch. Will run with the ball through there, and will very much get the ball where it needs to go. A lot of stats or attributes have been invested in the mental and technical side. A lot of things at 13, certainly dribbling off the ball, technique, passing vision, all of these very important stats for midfielders to have. Keep calling them stats when they're attributes, but nevertheless, it's all very important to have. And I alluded to it earlier, but central midfielders of any kind really, have so much that they need to invest in. So getting a very strong head start on all of those.
Yeah, I mean, Laser's former player Pascal Olivier. I mean, like a legend of the league, one of the best players, one of the best attacking players, I believe, in terms of like probably, you know, probably top 20 in goals and assists, I believe. And so this is someone that's recreating their second player, and I mean, if we go anything off of their first player, I believe that they could potentially make this one of the best, center midfielders. So yeah, they have really good stats, really balanced, and their player traits, runs with ball through center and curls ball, goes well with their position and like the build they're trying to make. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see them in the league and see. I believe they'll be here for a long time, and I see a long future with them.
Certainly, Romana shoring up their midfield between Cronus and Pedrillo just a couple picks ago, overhauling that's the center of the park in both Romana and London. Midfield, such an important part of any team. So good to see some investment in that regard.
Schwarzwälder with the next selection at 15 overall. And they select Maggie Sinclair, the user Kiamprak.
Well, we do have another striker off the board now, and once again, a very exciting one. Will be trying to beat the offside trap and will be trying to place shots out of the keeper's reach. Has the pace and acceleration to really do so with 16 in each. Also worth noting, 13 composure, which Omniscius earlier correctly pointed out is very important to any player that is trying to score a lot of goals, as certainly a striker will do. Can also play as an attacking midfielder in the center and on the right side. So we'll be adding a little bit of an extra edge to what is already a very deadly Schwarzwälder attack.
Yeah, and as you said, they have places shots and high composure, and they have contributed more goals than they were expected. And they're very, very fast, which goes well with trying to beat the offside trap. So I could see Maggie Sinclair being a really good advanced forward, and kind of just going on those runs right, on the defensive line and breaking through on a through ball and just going one on one with the keeper and placing it right around them. That seems kind of what essentially they're going for with this player.
So Schwarzfelder getting another striker to join their ranks at 15 overall. And then finally, rounding out the second round, we have Reykjavik coming back into the draft and making their second selection. And they select George Shaheen, the user Jiggy.
Well, this is one of those players that is very much a defensive presence, can play central defender primarily, but also left defender and right defender. So we'll be able to plug in pretty much anywhere needed on the back line there for Reykjavik/North Shore. Strong positioning, 16 is the headliner here. As we've said, it is extremely important for any defender, as well as 16 decisions, which is one that's a little more understated for defense, but nevertheless really does help in terms of when the pressure is on. There's a lot of high highs in this build, but the lows are still fairly low. In Dungeons and Dragons, this is what we might call a bit of a min-max build. A lot of attributes have been left in single digits. Certainly the likes of work rate, I would like to see come up a little bit, for instance. But it still, what this player does well, they do very well, and is going to once again be a very strong presence on that Reykjavik or North Shore back line.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on decision making being underrated. I believe it was me, if not it was Rashford, but we were the first two to max out our decision making, and those were the first thing we decided to put to 20. So in my opinion, I think for especially a defensive player, but really any player, but especially a center back or a midfielder, decision is probably the most important, and positioning, which is also at 16 for Shaheen, is also, in my opinion, one of the most important stats. Especially since they have marks opponent tightly. I mean, you also want marking for that, but positioning also really helps. So I think this is a really good, maybe not ball playing center back, but definitely, they seem like a no nonsense type of center back that will always, stay in position, not make, mistakes late in the game, and just kind of do their job really well.
Absolutely, and consistency is one of the biggest things you can ask for from any defensive position. So well equipped in that regard.
The first selection of the third round is coming up next, and we have União Sao Paulo actually making their the second selection after making the first overall pick. So at, where are we? 17 overall. União Sao Paulo selects João Peixoto, the user Zeagle1.
So another strong central midfielder coming off the board. It does feel like we've had a lot more of the elite central midfielders in this class than we usually do. 14 acceleration, 15 pace obviously will grab the headlines. 13 vision as well is very important for any player that is trying to help with an attack. And we see, of course, with the trait tries killer balls often, we'll be looking to make a very critical passes going forward, for which vision is very important. 12 passing could be a little higher, but for a draftee is still very good. Obviously, off the ball, we mentioned, is important at 10, so we'll be looking to beef that up a little bit. But nevertheless, I think this is a very strong platform to build on for Peixoto, and I think that Sao Paulo will have a lot of, certainly he'll be able to speak the language pretty easily, Peixoto being from Portugal and Sao Paulo, of course, being in Brazil. Obviously, there's differences. Brazilian Portuguese, Portuguese, not the same language quite, but similar enough.
Yeah, I mean, I just like to point out that I love Cucurella's hair. So another great player render hairstyle that's been picked here. But yeah, no, I feel like kind of repeating a lot, but it kind of is a good, like, this is kind of the good way the build is, high pace, high acceleration. It goes really well, gets forward whenever possible. High vision goes well with the tries killer balls often, and you can see that you know they've gone above their XG and their XA. So this is a really good pick. And I think, like you were saying earlier, this is an extremely strong class of midfielders. So I'm really excited, to be honest. I think it's going to be really competitive, and I think a few years from now we'll be seeing some of these players winning awards, maybe not MVP awards, but definitely a part of like the best 11 for their respective position.
Certainly best 11, and I would argue perhaps even for some of them a chance at the Golden Eye, which is, of course, our award for the most assists in the league season. So, certainly a lot of creativity in these midfield players for sure. Going to be a very interesting uh, couple of seasons as these players develop and come into their own.
Coming up next, we have two Catalunya picks back to back here. And at 18 overall, CF Catalunya selects Bernardo Fry, the user Curious Shadow.
Well, this is a player that is going to be focused on making chances happen along the left side of the pitch. Left midfielder as their primary position, but can also play left attacking mid and left wing back. So we'll be looking to get forward and make passes in crucial areas. I do like the trait possesses long flat throw. You don't see that terribly often, I don't think. It's always a fun little trait to play around with, and certainly going to be of huge help in deep throw situations where they might be able to get the ball into the box and create a chance from that. 15 acceleration and pace, always important when you're playing out wide. 15 passing as well, which will help with that. So, on the whole, I think this is a very dangerous potential weapon along the left side for Catalonia Soul.
Yeah, no, I think with they have goals, assists, they've contributed 8 chances. They are very, very fast for the wing, which is what you want, and they're a good playmaker too. So it'll be really exciting to see how they do on the left flank, and maybe give eventually give Red Panda some competition. And yeah, I think it's a really good pick for us, especially since that's kind of an area where we lack a little bit. I think we're actually, we've already picked two center midfielders, so didn't necessarily want to get too many midfielders. Well, I mean, this is a midfielder, but like a central midfielder. So, yeah.
And joining Fry in Catalunya, we have at 19 overall, Bartholomew Twinkletoes, the user Lock180.
The first goalkeeper off the board, and if you're going to pick a goalkeeper in this class, Twinkletoes might be the one to pick. 16 reflexes is the main point of notice here, but also 14 decisions. We were talking earlier about how important decisions is, and even though it doesn't really get a lot of love, and for goalkeepers, I think it's even more important, just because there is no margin for error when you are playing in goal. If you make one mistake, you could potentially gift wrap a chance for the opposition. So having decisions that high for a goalkeeper, I like a lot. Other than that, there were a couple of goalkeepers in this class, quite a few actually. I think we had 4 actives in this class, unless I'm mistaken, meaning each academy team had an active goalkeeper, which I don't think is terribly common. But it does bode well for those teams who do need goalkeepers. and Catalunya Soul getting a very good one here, it has to be said.
Yeah, I actually also agree that decision making is also important for goalkeepers, and knowing Johan Hernandez and his way of playing, he'll definitely want the goalie to also be involved and be more of a sweeper keeper. So yeah, I think this is gonna be really good for Catalonia. I think it'll provide some competition, and with Neuer heading out, Seoul will need a goalie for the upcoming season. So I think this will be a perfect goalie for us, and hopefully eventually they'll be able to make their way into the major leagues and play for Catalonia.
I'd also like to shout out the choice of Renner here. Mr. Monopoly, I think he's, or I know that's not his official name. I think the official name is Uncle Pennybags, but everyone just calls him Mr. Monopoly anyway. Uh, certainly a very inventive choice of render there, and I wanted to shout that out because I love that.
We have Hollywood.
That's amazing render.
Yeah, definitely one of the better ones in this draft class for sure. We have Hollywood coming up next at 20 overall, and they select Caspian Skovgard, another one of the Skovgards off the board. The user Evok.
Well, we did have a bit of a gap between the first and second Skovgard sibling coming off the board, and it's Caspian this time who is making the journey this time to Capstad/Hollywood, depending on how that roster shakes out. Another defensive midfielder who will be playing the ball from deep, and in defense is going to be very, very much focused on trying to keep players marked. That said, despite the trait marks opponent tightly, I do note the marking attribute for Caspian is currently only 9. So in order to get the most out of that trait, there will need to be a little bit more investment into that. Other than that, I think this is a very solid build for this player. 16 decisions, certainly good. 13 positioning and tackling will help in defense as well. So I think so. The second Skovgard off the board, and it is Caspian following the previous Skovgard, Dina.
Yeah, no, I think this is a solid pick. And I have the same one, so I'm biased, but I think comes deep to get ball, especially in the modern game, is kind of essential for a defensive mid. To like drop back, collect the ball, and help progress it forward. But I also think that Caspian will be a lot more defensively orientated than necessarily my player, and will help especially with breaking up counterattacks.
We have Tokyo at 21 overall, and I'm actually surprised that it was Tokyo who made this next selection. I would have assumed that Sao Paulo would have wanted to get their hands on the shortest player in the academy. Chopper Don Quixote, the user AM Johnson 636.
Well, we have another wide midfielder, which again I mentioned is a little unorthodox, at least in my. We certainly don't see a ton of tactics using wide midfielders, but certainly worth noting. This player already actually has 3 traits, which they aren't actually shown there. Obviously, you can see dictates tempo and tries killer balls, but also does have winds up opponents, which it's another one of those role play flavor traits that we don't really know. It's not especially clear of what effect, if any, it has on the sim, but it is fun to see regardless, as far as I'm concerned. 14 jumping reach is pretty good. It's a little odd on a wide midfielder/wingback. Acceleration and pace could be a little bit higher, but makes up for it with high dribbling and positioning, and 13 work rate as well, I mentioned, is certainly a very important aspect here. So certainly going to be, it's a bit of an unorthodox fit for the Tokyo system, but I have faith that this will pan out very well, or at least that's certainly the hope among Tokyo management.
Yeah, sorry. I think that yeah, this player will be, I know they're very small, but as a winger, I mean it's okay to be small. I mean, the in my opinion, the best player like in the world is Messi, and he's like very short. So I feel like, especially if they get their agility really high, this could potentially be a really dangerous, dribbly kind of like playmaker.
We have a trade to announce in preparation for pick number 22, and that trade involves the original owner of this pick, AC Romana, and União Sao Paulo. So for the 22nd overall pick in this draft, the third round pick for Romana, they send that to União Sao Paulo alongside a third round pick in next season's draft, and they get the S18 Reykjavik third, 24th overall, and the S18 Sao Paulo 5th, 33 overall. So Sao Paulo moving up 2 spots in this draft and sending a 5th round pick to Romana for that cost. They're getting a 3rd round pick back as well in the next draft class, and who knows how big that draft class is going to be.
Well, once again, we see Romana turning 1 pick in this draft into 2. They are accumulating as many picks as they can in this very deep class, which I think is a very solid strategy, ensuring that they can have their pick of the players in that 2nd or 3rd tier of player once we get into the later rounds. And also benefiting from this trade, certainly. Obviously, whenever you trade up, you want to do so for a player that you really need. That's why you trade up. So they saw the opportunity to move up to take their player, and it's going to be very interesting to see who they took with this.
And with this pick, we see Sao Paulo selecting Benicio Aguilera III, the user Crony3.
Well, this is a very intriguing pick, I have to say. The second goalkeeper off the board, but I do want to point out, I believe it was this past season that Sao Paulo drafted Calvin Ball, the goalkeeper, and who is immediately slotted into Sao Paulo's starting lineup. I can imagine this is an attempt to ensure that AS Paris, their minor league affiliate, also have solid goalkeeping, which is certainly admirable. But taking goalkeepers 2 seasons in a row, I think some eyebrows will be raised. Still, Aguilera III is a pretty solid pick here in a vacuum. 17 reflexes, arguably one of the most important traits a goalkeeper can have. Also, high positioning and anticipation. So, this keeper does have tools to succeed for sure.
Also, balance is really underrated actually too. It'll help them, going out for those corner kicks and either catching or punching the ball and battling with the strikers. So I think this is, it's really tough because goalies are kind of the opposite of defenders in that there isn't a lot of goalies, but there's also like just one position, and there's only 8 teams, and if all 8 teams have a goalie, it is kind of difficult to fit another one in. But I also think that it can help give some competition to the goalies, and maybe push them both to keep training and to keep being active, and hopefully bring the best out of each other.
That I would imagine is the ideal scenario here for Sao Paulo Paris. I do also want to point out Aguilera does have 37 uncommitted TPE, so once that is applied, it'll be very interesting to see how that shakes out. Certainly a little bit of an extra boost that can be added over the attributes that we see here currently.
With 2 picks remaining in the third round, we will move to Schwarzwälder at pick 23 overall. And they select Zoe Clark, the user Sleepy Plays.
Well, I speak from a position of not inconsiderable bias when I say that playing as a left defender, or really a wide defender of any sort, is a very exciting pick to make. We already saw them picking a right back, I believe, earlier in this draft, with, I believe, now, unless I'm mistaken, they already picked a right defender. So they are now, it would seem, shoring up the left side of their defense, and certainly a very strong way to do it. Clark will not be making as many runs with the ball and won't be really be taking too many shots, but in return will be a lot more of a defensive presence. Can be relied upon to be in the right positions with 16 positioning, strong decisions at 14, acceleration and pace at 14 as well. So this is a very much more defensive pick at fullback here, or wing back, I suppose, would be more accurate. But certainly a very exciting addition here. Going to be Schwarzwälder are setting themselves up very well for the future at fullback, on either side.
I'd also like to point out that Zoe Clark is a second generation SSL player. Her father used to play for FC Catalonia and I believe Kapstad for 2 or 3 seasons. So kind of the opposite of her dad. She's a defender, whereas her dad was a winger. But very excited to join the league and potentially, carry on that family legacy.
We have the last pick of the third round, Romana, coming in to make their selection, and they select Aiden Hutchinson Jr., the user Heffa.
Well, obviously the real life Aiden Hutchinson, a little bit of a heartbreak there for any Lions fans who happen to be out there. But in the meantime, Aiden Hutchinson Jr. making the debut in the SSL for AC Romana, who we've mentioned had assembled a fairly large contingent of picks, will be looking to make a huge difference in the defensive half. Dives into tackles, certainly not afraid to put one's body on the line, which I suppose is a little bit of a worry considering the real Aiden Hutchinson, but nevertheless, strong will be marking opponents tightly, and with 12 marking, will be doing so pretty well out of the box and can only improve from there. Also very quick and very strong, and tackles very well, which is important when diving into tackles. 71 defensive actions in academy play out of only 9 appearances is a very good return rate. So I think this is a very solid pick for AC Romana.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really solid center back. They even have like a 6.9 average rating, so and a 71 defensive rating. So I think they're really, really good. They're really fast, can play a high line. They have dives in the tackle with 14 tackling and marks opponent tightly. So I think this is like just your old school, no nonsense center back that will win you the ball back and keep the ball out of the net essentially.
And as
And we
North pointed out in the general chat in the SSL Discord, Hutchinson Jr. was one of the sole defenders for Sydney in the academy, essentially playing as a single central defender with not a lot of help from around them. So definitely the 6.9 average rating there is definitely well earned.
And I've gone on record saying that anybody who plays a solid defensive position has my respect. So kudos to Heffa for making a defensive player, and I think Romana will be very delighted with what they get. I think this is going to be a very, very good pick for them.
We will go back to the draft board here while making some changes behind the scenes. And we're finishing the third round here at pick 24. We still have about as many picks remaining. Going on an hour. Maybe let's see if we can go under 2.5. Hopefully, at least.
I feel like we're making pretty good time.
Yeah, definitely more efficient than we were last season. So it's looking good. It's looking good. Anything that stands out to you guys now after 3 full rounds has been completed?
Well, I keep saying it, but the fact that we've seen only 2 of the Skavgards gone in 3 rounds is a little surprising based on how much hype there was around them going into this draft. But I do want to reiterate for those players who went in the second or third rounds, and especially for those who still have yet to be picked, this is absolutely not an indictment on your player's build or you personally. There's just so many good players in this draft, so that to go in the third or fourth or even fifth round is not an indicator that you are a bad player by any means. It's just that there's so much talent to get to. This is, as we said at the top of the broadcast, this is one of the biggest classes in SSL history. So by necessity, a lot of good players are going to slip just because of how this is structured. So by all means, please take heart that just because you go later in the round does not mean that you are not a valued player or a member of this community, because you absolutely will be.
Yeah, I mean, like, my team had to waste their second round pick on me, so I feel like this is like, I think I could be wrong, but I believe this is the second biggest draft we've ever had. If not, it would be the third.
Yeah, definitely somewhere around there. Yeah,
because I think it was season 6 or 7 that was quite big, or maybe it was 4. I don't know. My memory is off.
yeah.
But I think it was 7. I think it was 7. That was like, there was like a bunch of people. We went like 4 or 5 rounds, and we had more teams back then.
Yeah, that is
So
true.
it was
So
like,
the rounds were bigger too,
yeah.
But with that being said, we have the 25th overall selection, União Sao Paulo, coming in to start off round 4, and they select Chef Gagne, the user Chef Gagne.
Well, the player's name is Chef Gagne, and honestly, I would say Sao Paulo are cooking with this pick. Pardon the pun. But this is going to be one of your textbook facilitators, as you could probably guess, by the 20 passing. It is not that easy to start with a 20 in anything as a new create or as a recreate. But that, along with looking for the pass and trying long range passes, this player is going to get the ball where they need to get it. Now, that being said, there is a bit of a caveat to that. The vision attribute is currently only at a 10 for Chef Gagne, so it might face a little bit more difficulty finding the ideal passing lanes. And in addition, decisions is only a 9, so it might take a little bit of doing to find the optimal angle of attack. But once Gagne does, that ball will get where it needs to go. Also, I note 16 positioning, which is a bit of a curious choice, but not at all unwelcome. It's certainly going to be a little less prone to counterattacks and generally defensive action, defensive liability, as you might normally attribute with a more advanced player. So it might not be the most efficient addition, but it is still very useful in its own way.
Yeah, I'm certainly a player that has a lot of, ability, like essentially, especially their passing ability, but maybe right now the floor for their ability isn't that, as high as some of the picks before them, but their ceiling certainly seems like it could be, potentially a golden eye, multiple time golden eye winner if they can work on the other areas of their game to be able to really fully utilize that passing ability.
And I also do want to point out, not to drop too much negativity, but they did appear 13 times in the academy, but only contributed to 3 goals in that time. So certainly room to grow for Gagne. But as you say, once that, if they can invest in some of these more lacking attributes, the sky truly is the limit. That passing is frankly generational for a player this new. So certainly stuff to work on, but I think could be this pick could look a lot better in a couple seasons time.
We have a trade to announce for pick number 26. And that trade looks like this between Buenos Aires and Catalunya. Catalunya sends the 26 overall selection, their 4th round pick, to Buenos Aires for an S19 third and an S19 4th. So Buenos Aires really wanting to come back into the draft here in the 4th round, and willing to pay for it too for the next, or from the next draft asset pool they have. And
This is an
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I apologize. I was just going to say this is a very interesting move here. Certainly Catalunya with picks left to make in this draft, but certainly will be shoring up their picks in the next draft. Be banking on another fairly decent class. 3rd and 4th round picks usually aren't as valuable in normal drafts. Of course, this isn't really a normal draft, but yeah, an interesting strategy for Catalunya. I see this as an absolute win for Buenos Aires.
And with the 26th overall selection, Buenos Aires picks up Bartholomew Lorquavius, the user JPC8237.
Well, this is another player that primarily plays central defender, but can play at either fullback. You love to see that sort of versatility on the back line. The traits picked are, again, we mentioned argues with officials is one of those traits that seems to be more for role play purposes than for having a more concrete effect. If there is an effect, it's kind of hard to suss out. Similarly, gets crowd going, does tend to have if there is an impact on that, it is fairly hard to notice a lot of the times. So, but nevertheless, certainly not a bad selection at any rate. Physically speaking, this player is reasonably well-rounded. 12s in just about everything that can be augmented except for strength, but does find themselves lacking in the mental and technical side of things. Does have 94 TPE banked though, which tells me that no TPE has been invested since creation, but it has all been banked, so there is plenty of room to grow immediately based on whatever the Buenos Aires Athenine management may ask of this player.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think, they're just a passionate lad. They argue with the officials, gets the crowd going. This could potentially be, a captain or potentially, maybe a villain down the road. But we'll see. I think though that despite maybe their build not being the strongest, I think they also were the last to join the draft class, and I think their single appearance where they got 7.7 was kind of enough to convince Buenos Aires to kind of small sample size, but he must have impressed them enough to get selected.
Lorquavius did notch 2 assists in that lone appearance, so certainly as I said, a lot of room to grow and to continue to develop. So certainly going to be one to watch with great interest as the seasons go on.
Catalunya coming up on 27 overall, and they select Alex Stain, the user Davy Boy.
So So this is so again, I need to mention my bias as a left defender myself. I do like the direction this player is headed. Low acceleration, but very high pace. So they have a high top speed, though they won't necessarily get there too quickly. But that 17 agility should more than make up for it. They're also very aggressive. I'd like to point out 15 aggression. Uh, I'm showing, so that will help them sort of make challenges a little bit more forcefully. Maybe win some balls that they wouldn't otherwise, but on the flip side, might result in a few more fouls and even bookings if they're not careful. Still, though, 17 strength will help them win the ball away pretty efficiently. They do like to get into the opposition area, and they also mark their opponent tightly. But once again, I note that marking hasn't really been invested into. So in order to get the most out of that trait, it would probably behoove this player to try and work on their marking a little bit in the future. But as things stand, still a very strong pick at fullback for Catalonia.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the trade to give up one of our picks for 2 picks, knowing that we had some more picks down the line, and with a lot of talent still available to us, and only so much room to, you know, we only could take so many new players. I think it was really we were really lucky that Alex Stain was still available because they looked like a really solid defender, and they also promised whatever team would draft them would at least make a semifinals of the SL Cup. So we're looking forward to seeing if they can really fulfill their promise. And being one of the, I believe they were a bit later in joining the academy. So whilst they may have not had the most TPE on the board, we thought that they showed a lot of passion and excitement for the league. And so we were really excited to give them an opportunity to join us and really help bolster our backline, which, to be honest, is probably an area of need for us.
Indeed, no amount of TPE can really replicate the level of excitement and passion for the league that really does sort of come along with some of the better players in this league. And it stands to reason that the more invested you are in it, the more likely you are for your player to do well over the season. So certainly I think this is a very solid pick for Catalonia, as I've said.
With the 28th overall selection, Romana is back on the board, and they select Dizzy Martin. They use a law lore.
Well, this is one of the players that I will reveal that this is one of the players that Tokyo had on the board for a little while, and certainly in that regard, I would say that Romana are getting a very strong defensive midfielder here. Strong investment in strength and in work rate. Will be trying to maybe not playing as advanced of a passing game, but does mark opponents tightly. They do have a third trait there, and with 12 marking can take advantage of that. We'll be able to nullify attacking midfielders pretty effectively, I would say. Just generally, I think a pretty strong setup here. We'll be looking to be a bit of a ball winner, I would imagine. Just going in, taking shins, asking no questions. A midfield destroyer of the best kind.
Yeah, I mean, I think out of all the defensive midfielders we've seen so far, this is probably the most old school. And I think with the amount of creative attacking talent we've seen in this draft class, that Dizzy Martin could potentially be a perfect, partner for, these midfielders, these other midfielders that are getting picked up, because they're kind of gonna bring the other side of that balance and I think it could work really well with if they're paired with someone that's like a little more technical and a little more interested in attacking.
Well, this midfield trio that Romana had picked up in this draft, Andres Pedrillo, Daedalus Cronus, and now Dizzy Martin, it is a complete revamp of that center of the pitch for Romana. And I think exciting times ahead in the Italian capital.
We have a trade to announce, the final trade for this draft, and it is for 29 overall. And it looks like this between Catalunya and Reykjavik. So Reykjavik sends their Tokyo 4th, 29th overall pick to Catalunya alongside a Reykjavik 3rd round pick in next season's draft. And Catalunya returns their 2nd round draft pick from next season. So Catalunya paying to get a 29th overall in this draft.
Yeah, essentially, we have 3 third-round picks for next season, and we decided to get one more player in for the 4th round. Although we do have some later picks, we knew the amount of active players was slowly starting to go down, and we want to make sure we got what we wanted for our squad moving forward.
And with this 29th overall selection, they select, or you select, Jordan Bamford, the user Bamford13.
Yeah,
Well, sorry.
I-
I'll let you speak to this a bit.
Kind of with the Alex Stain pick, we were kind of just surprised that that like Jordan Bamford was still on the board, and we want to bring defenders in, and you know, earlier in the draft we kind of got like center midfielders and a winger and a goalie, so this is kind of us just filling in those other areas, and they have a really good build. They have really good marking and tackling and decision, which is kind of like exactly what you want to see for your defender. And yeah, we thought they looked really excited for the league, and I really think that they'll do well to kind of fill in the defensive gaps, because to be honest, a lot of our players, or especially our defensive players, have kind of aged out and have retired over the years, or are planning on retiring soon. So we're just trying to build a team for the future.
Certainly, this is a very strong way to do that. Can play either fullback, primarily right back though, and again does possess the long flat throw, which I mentioned can surprisingly make the difference in some deep throw situations. We'll also be trying some passing from long range, and as you say, is going to be very influential uh, in that defensive hole that we'll be filling. Uh, also, also 15 positioning and 15 marketing is basically just what I said, going to be very important in that regard.
Romana is making another selection in this draft. They traded a lot of picks in this later rounds here. And at 30 overall, they select Rodiano Santori, the user NJ Badapple.
Well, this is another winger that we see. Nicolo Barella is the render, which I note with some joy. That is a very strong render choice. And also, once again, I have to say, pretty decent hair as well. But nevertheless, more germane comment is the 13 passing that is their key attribute here. Will be pretty helpful from the wing to try and get into advanced positions. Can also play striker and attacking midfielder. Will dictate the tempo, which is an intriguing choice on the wing. It has to be said. You usually see that trait more so with midfielders. It'll be interesting to see how much of an impact that has out wide. But other than that, another pretty well-rounded player, has a number of attributes in the low double digits. Pretty good base to build on overall.
And
I got that.
Santori is, I mean, in the 15 appearances in the academy, they scored 5 goals and assisted on 8. Definitely one of the more offensive, involved players in the academy that that Romana is still picking up. It's like you guys have mentioned before earlier in this broadcast. They are really making a completely new midfield from these this entire draft class. '31 overall, we see Schwarzwälder Fußballverein coming back into the draft board, and they select Sam Volta, Triplets Gamer.
I have to say, the render game from this class has been pretty much on point. So many really fun ones. But yeah, this is going to be this is a very solid pick. Wide midfielder, but also plays a little further advanced left attacking mid, right attacking mid. Another well-rounded player, a lot of attributes in the 12 to 11 to 10 range. Acceleration and pace, obviously, are 12 and 11 respectively. 12 teamwork is a good sign. Certainly an underrated attribute, but does help with the likes of passing and vision to distribute the ball. And overall, once again, I think this is a very solid pick. Certainly room for growth, and very interesting to see how Volta fits in here with SFV.
Yeah, I think too. I really like their lights to switch ball to the other flank. I think, depending on how you know, Montreal and oh my god, I'm gonna Schwarzwälder.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
Schwarzwälder.
Schwarzfelder. If they plan on kind of using more of like a wide kind of attack, with like wingers or maybe like a wing back or something, and kind of, you know, focus the ball on one side of the field, and then, you know, on the other side of the field switch it, and then, you know, the other players one on one. Um, we've kind of seen that in real life happen over the past few years, and I think it's like really effective. So it'd be really cool to see if you know, Sam Volta can be the type of player that like um you know, take the ball a lot, dribble a lot, and then, you know, potentially switch the play to his, you know, other winger, and then as the team is moving over to cover that, they can kind of sneak in, receive that cross, and place a shot, and as like an easy tap in or something. So yeah, I don't know. This player has a really unique, kind of interesting build that I think if it worked like in a certain tactic, it would be really interesting to see play out.
And rounding off the 4th round of selections, we have União Sao Paulo back on the board, and they select Greedy McFootcakes, the user JReed12.
Now, I might be seeing double here, but I believe we have another Mr. Monopoly render, which is kind of fascinating to me. If I had a nickel for every player in this class that I've seen with the Mr. Monopoly as the render, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Memes aside, this is a player that is going to be very much a contributor on the left side of the pitch. Left midfield, the primary position, but can also play attacking mid and wing back. Certainly going to be certainly going to be trying to advance a little bit more. With 15 finishing, we'll want to get as much use of that out as possible. 15 agility and vision as well will be very important. Tries Tricks is an interesting choice, but only has 6 technique, which would be which you'd need to see that come up a little bit in order to really get the most out of that trait. But as things stand, I think a very agile, very strong finisher, and certainly going to be very, very effective in shoring up the left side for Sao Paulo.
Yeah, I mean, I also love the render for this one. I think this player looks like a really interesting, fun type of winger. I kind of said earlier that like I'm really excited that Trash Tricks is available player trait now, and I'm really excited, especially with 15 agility, because I think for Trash Tricks to like really work well, you want obviously agility, probably acceleration and pace, flair, technique, and dribbling. So I think when these players are, I'm excited to see kind of how it plays out once they really develop and fine tune all those different attributes. And even though he may not be the tallest player, I think we've seen that short players can do quite well actually in terms of changing their speed, their pace with the ball, and changing direction really quickly, and kind of zigzagging their way through defenses. So um, it'll be cool to see Greedy make foot cakes on the ball and how they kind of develop their game in the future.
It's going to be very exciting and or potentially scary when Greedy McFootcakes eventually has to take a shot against Bartholomew Twinkletoes. I think if and when that happens, the universe might collapse into a singularity. So, I suppose we'll see whenever that day may come.
We have the start of the 5th round, AC Romana back on the board. And they select with the 33rd overall selection, Shingo Takechi, the user Darthus.
Well, this, I believe, is the 3rd goalkeeper off of the board. And I think, once again, the goalkeepers are very well built in this class thus far. 14 aerial reach is very important for any goalkeeper. Common misconception that it's jumping reach that that dictates how well that particular attribute for goalkeepers. Aerial reach is in fact the one that you want to buff, and indeed this is the case here. Apart from that, 16 agility is helpful, and 14 strength will be beneficial in situations where Takechi is going to have to try and claim the ball out of a crowd, which does happen fairly often in the SSL. So I think certainly, again, room to improve, but I think a very solid presence in goal here, taken by Romana.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a really good pick, to be honest. They were a bit later in joining, which is why they maybe have a little bit less TPE. But honestly, they came in full of excitement and they did really well in the academy. And I think Romana. I think Romano and Inner London will benefit really well from this pick.
Catalunya on the 34th selection overall in this draft class, they select Nikolai Ahmed, the user Pizza.
Well, once again, shout out to another Tottenham Hotspur render. This one, Lucas Bergvall, the recent transfer there. Another player that can play pretty much anywhere in central midfield, be it in the middle, attacking, or defending. Certainly has a lot of versatility there as the position combination would need. 15 dribbling and 16 passing will mean that the player can get through the middle and distribute the ball effectively. Playing 1-2s will also help with that, as will try and killer balls. So I would expect a lot of big things from this player. I'm assuming those academy attributes are correct in that they didn't technically make any appearances. I guess that means they were exclusively substitute appearances.
That is correct,
But
yes.
in that limited action, did manage an assist and a rating of 7.1. So we haven't seen a lot of this player on the pitch, but what we have seen is pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a bit of criticism that they are a little bit like budget Chavi, but I think they're also a bit more of a ball progressing player rather than just a pass progressing player. And I think it'll be really exciting to see the two of them as well as Ben kind of join together to form a potential deadly trio. So yeah, I'm really excited for this pick. I personally love midfielders. It's the position I play in real life, and I'm kind of like Pep Guardiola, where I just like playing midfielders everywhere. So yeah, I'm really excited about this pick. They have a really good player build, and they joined a bit later, but they seem very excited, and I think this will be a huge benefit for us as a team personally.
Well, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Omniscious comparing himself to Pep Guardiola. Surely that will not backfire.
It already has, don't worry.
Buenos Aires is coming up next at 35 overall, and they select Kuba Kuniki, the user Chili Bro.
Well, this is another player that is going to be primarily playing in an attacking capacity. Once again, we see the player trying to beat the offside trap. 14 acceleration will help with that. Would like the pace to be a little higher for that trait, but nevertheless, certainly room to add to that over time. Also worth noting, plays 1-2s, which is very helpful when you are a central attacking midfielder. That tells me this might be a more of a shadow striker type. Will be playing a little more withdrawn in that attacking midfield, and playing in strikers to get into position to receive the ball again and then making the finish. Nevertheless, it is a very strong investment in decisions that is the crucial part of this build thus far. As I say, pretty much every pick at this point, decisions are so important. Being able to know when the ideal time is to make that run, to play that 1-2, that really does make the difference in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think this is another really good pick. Honestly, surprised they went so late. I mean, they didn't play a full season. They're a bit late in joining. But in the 5 appearances they played, they had 2 goals and 3 assists. So that's a goal contribution per a game. And with a 7.54 average rating, 8 chances created, this looks like a really dangerous attacking player. They play 1-2s and likes to beat the offside trap, so I can see them passing the ball, running, and receiving the ball as they beat that offside trap and can get one-on-one with the goalkeeper or something of that nature. They have the acceleration for it, and with their concentration and decision also being a strength of theirs, they'll be able to really be able to make the right decisions and use their creative abilities to like the fullest of its potential.
And we're making another pick. Romana is making another pick at 36 overall. And they select... Yes, it's still this one. Grand Boyer, the user Grand Boyer.
Well, this is a very strong pick, I think. One of the sleeper picks, I would say. Playing at right wing back, can also play left wing back or right midfield. But the thing that jumps out is the high acceleration and pace. Obviously, so important with a position that, as Omniscious pointed out earlier, runs pretty much more than any other position. Uh, Also important for fullbacks is crossing and dribbling, both of which this player has in spades. So is very technically gifted on top of being a physical specimen. The only thing I question is the lack of investment into the mental side of the game, as apart from bringing decisions to 7, everything else is currently at a 5. So I would like to see some of those come up, especially, again, work rate is important. Off the ball and or positioning could stand to be a little bit more. But regardless, I think this is a very interesting, very exciting potentially pick for this organization. And Romano once again taking really another really exciting player.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of joined near the end, but they did really well coming off the bench, as you can tell with the goal and assist. Having a great game and helping us win the academy season. But I am also kind of curious because they're a wing back on both sides as well as a right midfield. Um, and they run with the ball often. They have high crossing, but they also cut inside from both wings. So I'm not sure if they're trying to be an inverted wing back. Which I mean, crossing is still useful in the half spaces, but I'm just kind of curious exactly if they're trying to be more of an inverted wingback rather than a traditional complete wingback that just like runs down the flank.
We have another selection from Tokyo at 37 overall, and they select Joey Anderdaughter, the user Mr. Ruihu.
Well, there ain't no rule that says a dog can't play soccer. I'll tell you that much for free. 14 flair, as you'd expect, is an exciting addition in terms of attributes. Primarily plays left attacking mid, but can play a little further back on the right as a right mid, or in the center as a center attacking mid. In any case, will be useful as an inside forward as they can cut inside from the wing. They'll also be taking some pretty long shots as things stand. So, going to be interesting to see how that works out. 12 acceleration and pace is pretty good at this level, and uh, certainly also good dribbling and anticipation. Uh, 76 banked TPE as well. Going to be very interesting to see how that is allocated, because it once again, all of the TPE earned apart from the initial allocation has yet to be committed. So certainly going to be a lot is going to depend on how that TPE is spent, but on the whole, an intriguing pick.
Yeah, I mean, as someone that has a golden retriever myself, I love this pick here. It's so cute. It'll be exciting to see a dog running down the flank, especially with 14 flair. So I'm sure they'll be using all four limbs and their heads to come up with a lot of different tricks. So yeah, I think this is gonna be a really exciting player. And their stats and their player traits go quite well with their position. And although it looks like they joined a little late and were mostly just a substitution, they were definitely super subs, getting 2 goals, assist, and a 7.14 average rating, as well as doing better than what they were expected to do with their time on the pitch. So yeah, I mean, a bit later in the draft, but this player looks like they showed promise in the time that they had available and could potentially be a really good pick down the line.
There is one potential hang up to note, though. Tokyo Cairo do already have a Puma on their squad, so it'll be interesting to see how these two interact. I suppose we'll see.
And I think I know the reason as to why we're seeing 0 appearances on some of these players. I believe that the value is actually a decimal, but the database might not read that properly, so it just makes it a 0, makes it a not available. So I will need to look into that further, because I know Ander Daughter has played starting minutes in the beginning of the season and then coming on as a sub afterwards, probably making the appearances, making those like these half measures. But at any rate, we're moving on to Romana making another selection in this draft. How many picks does Romana actually have? 38 overall. They select. Nope. Why is this not working?
Romana also select Joey Anderdaughter somehow.
No, they do not. But what is happening?
That's a joke,
Okay.
to be clear.
Why is this not working? Okay, let's see if I can do it manually then. There we go. David Corrigan, the user DC98.
So, as somebody pointed out just now in the chat, I believe that was Darthus who pointed it out, this is going to be Romana's 9th pick of this draft, I think. Somebody can check the math on that. But once again, another defensive midfielder being taken here by Romana. Can also play central defender and left defender as well. Might be seeing a little more use in that regard. 13 acceleration and pace is a solid baseline. And once again, a lot of other attributes that are at least 10, as high as 12. So certainly a very well-rounded player here at this stage in the draft. An odd combination of traits here. Runs with ball rarely, but brings ball out of defense. I'm curious to see how those interplay with one another. Certainly going to be a very interesting player to watch. Playing deep, probably a little bit deeper as a defender or as a defensive midfielder. So I'm not sure whether that's a clash of traits or not, but I suppose we'll see soon enough how that goes.
Well, they rarely run out with the ball, except from defense, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I kind of agree with you there. But who knows? Maybe it kind of helps work out in the fact that maybe they just bring out defense and then kind of don't dribble with it, maybe in the midfield necessarily or something. But really cool to see a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle joining in the SSL. I mean, with their pace and acceleration and agility being kind of decently high, it kind of makes sense, given their background as ninjas. So I think they'll kind of bring like a athletic presence, and I'm sure, they're very dedicated to their martial arts, and I believe if they bring that dedication to the game of football, they can easily become a top player in the league.
Let's see if this works better this time around. We have 39 overall, and Schwarzwälder is coming back in, and they select. Nope. Okay, let's do it manually again. They select Alexander Skovgard, the user Phaelax.
Well, the third of the Skovgard siblings finally coming off the board. The last one was taken at 20 overall, so that is a difference of that is a difference of 19 picks between these Skovgard siblings, which is a bit of a surprise, it has to be said, for players that were expected to be taken at the very top of the draft. Nevertheless, Skovgard does have a considerable amount of talent in central midfield. We'll be looking to dictate the tempo in the middle for SFV, and also try those killer balls to try and unlock attacks 14 passing and 13 vision will help along those lines, as well as 13 first touch, which we haven't really talked about, but is also extremely important, especially in a position like in midfield, where possession can be won and lost so easily just based on how strong or weak someone's first touch is.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people expected this player to go in the first round, and so in a lot of ways, I think this could be a potential steal of the draft. They had a really good season, and their traits dictates tempo, tries killer ball, goes really well, as you can tell with their 6 assists. So yeah, I believe this is a really solid pick. Um, I'm honestly really surprised that they went this long, which I know I'm also like guilty for. Um, but yeah, I think this is a really good pick, and I can see them being considered like down the line a steal of the draft if they come back and continue to be active.
Also, want to point out earlier in this draft, SFB did also draft Dina Skovgaard at 7th overall. So Schwarzwalder have now drafted two of the much ballyhooed Skovgaard siblings, and only one now remains on the board.
And with the final selection in the 5th round, Reykjavik United select. Damn it, the button doesn't work. Let's do it like this again. The final Skovgaard, Berit Skovgaard, the user Mer.
Well, right on cue, the last of the four Skovgaard siblings goes off the board, and there's not really much of a better destination than Reykjavik North Shore right now. Certainly a very strong defensive presence, central defender, the primary position, but can also play at fullback on either side. 15 jumping reach and 13 heading is very important for any central defender, and also 15 acceleration, 13 pace means that they won't be as easily caught out on counterattacks. Short, simple passes will help to mask some of the deficiencies in the passing game, and the tight marking is very beneficial to any defensive player, especially one that plays so tenaciously in defense. I think this is a very high value pick here for Reykjavik North Shore, and even though Barrett is the last of the Skovgards to come off the board, I very much doubt that that will dictate the performance of this particular player.
Yeah, no, I think this is again another pickup that could have definitely come earlier. I know there's some reservations because I believe the user went inactive, but um, you know, and it was said in the chat if anyone can bring them back into being active and earning, it's probably Rashford. So I think this will be a really good pick for them, and I think despite maybe where they are now, I can see long-term things changing, and you know, Barrett kind of being long-term a part of the SSL.
And with
And
that, we
worth
have.
noting.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to point out that Merit is actually recreating. Was previously in the SSL. Unfortunately, their player name escapes me at the present moment, but this is a recreate, so certainly going to be looking to try and continue where they left off.
I should also know that name, but yeah, it escapes me too. But with that, we have rounded out the 5th round of the SSL Prospect Draft. And we have the first selection of the 6th round coming up with União Sao Paulo. And they select Lugnut Somnolentus, the user Son of Car.
Well, this is another player that is going to be trying to dictate the tempo in central midfield. Can also play as a wide midfielder as needed, so certainly with a little bit of chops out on the wing. 15 decisions, very important, as is 15 anticipation and aggression. So we'll be trying to break up opposing teams' moves as best they can. Sort another one of those midfield disruptor types that you like to see. Uh, Certainly, also marking the opponent tightly, as we mentioned, very important for any defensive player. Only 10 marking, they might be not quite as accomplished as it and at that right out of the box, but with time and investment, will be very much capable of locking down opponents.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Son of Car. This is another recreate and someone I know from the SBA. I really like their player build. I think the way they built their player with the anticipation, aggression, decisions, they'll do really well in a high press system and could potentially be like a very important central midfielder for any type of team that might have like an abundance of creative talent, but maybe struggle to actually like win the ball back when they lose it. So I can see this player actually slotting really well in a team given what we've seen from the other midfielders so far. They kind of bring something a bit different.
Catalunya making another selection, and they select at 42 overall Kjell Varnsson, the user Lumosity fan.
So this is a player that is once again exclusively playing out wide. Left midfielder or left wingback is their primary port of call, although they can play on the right wing as well, the right midfield wing, that particular kind of wing. Right? 13 off the ball is pretty good, I would say. Means that in attacking moves with other players that have the ball, we'll be able to get the most out of that gets forward whenever possible trait, and we'll be getting into some very threatening areas, and not just to score, but as you can see from the stat line for the academy, more so as a facilitator as well, with 6 assists in 15 appearances. Certainly nothing to sneeze at there. Apart from that, once again, very well rounded. A lot of attributes in the double digits. Good solid base to build on. I think this is a very high value pick for Catalonia.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like, I mean, it's naturally gonna happen, I guess, in a draft of this size, but just kind of genuinely surprised that they weren't taken. So we took them because they looked like a really promising player, and we kind of expected them to have gone by then. So we were really surprised slash happy to be able to bring this player on board.
And it's like I said earlier on, just the fact that there are so many active players in this class means that by necessity, a lot of players that in other seasons would be first or second rounders just kind of have to slip this far down. And this does lead to a lot of really good finds in these later rounds, as we've seen. So honestly, very exciting to see how these organizations take advantage of that as we get to the very end of this draft. We still have a little bit of a ways to go yet, but certainly this is where the managers earn their job pay, I would say.
We have Buenos Aires up again and pick number 43, and they select Ethan Ashcroft, the user Ethan C611.
So this is a player that can play pretty much anywhere on the front line, left wing, right wing, or especially striker. Another player that will try to beat the offside trap, and also can really blast the ball past the keeper. Certainly very important for a player that has high finishing, decent composure, not necessarily the highest technique. Shooting with power does sort of get around the necessity for high technique, and makes it very difficult to stop this player's shots. Decent physical build, 12 excel and pace. A lot of attributes in the 10 or 11 range. Uh, ultimately, I think this is going to be a very interesting addition to the attack here for Buenos Aires Atheni. Could be a very dynamic attacker. Only 2 goals from 5 appearances. That's still a pretty solid return, and did also contribute 1.39 XA. So is also helpful in playing in other teammates as well as taking chances himself.
Yeah, no, I think this player looks really good. Um, I uh, I think their 15 finishing looks really promising. So, um, they didn't, get a whole season in, but I do believe they showed pretty good promise. And with the way they build their player, I can see them, maybe being a top or one of the top goal scorers in the minor leagues next year. I mean, unless they go straight to the major leagues, but I definitely can see this player with a little bit more time and training camp and such, really being able to help put the ball back in the net.
We have our first pass coming up on pick 44, and this is where managers don't want to pick up another player, so they decide to pass their pick instead. And as such, we have pick number 45 coming up with Tokyo, and they select Gary McGarry, the user Tornado Messiah.
Well, when I look at this player's attributes, the first thing that jumps out to me is not just the high strength and tackling, but the bravery. 15 bravery, an attribute you don't see beefed up a lot, but is very, very helpful when trying to make challenges. This is a player that has a lot of physical ability and is not afraid to use it. Will make strong tackles, diving into them, in fact, as you can see from the traits there. This is a player that will absolutely attempt to wreck pretty much anything going up the opponent's left side. They can play anywhere along the back line, but right defense is where they shine, and ultimately certainly could use a little bit of investment, but is very, very much a defensive force. And Tokyo Cairo will be hoping that that continues to be borne out over time.
Yeah, I mean, personally, we were kind of hoping they would drop to us because they looked like a really promising player and kind of were very surprised they weren't taken. But yeah, I think they look like the perfect, physical, no nonsense kind of defender. And I can see them doing, I mean, they did do really well in the academy. They had 2 assists, and a 6.83 match rating. So yeah, I believe they'll do really well as long as they keep training, keep working on their game, and could definitely be one of the more scary defenders in the league in terms of physicality.
Romana is up again with 46 overall, and they select Ryota Ando, the user Ando.
Well, another very strong attacking presence here. Striker as their primary position, but also playing left and right winger. High acceleration and pace. I like to hit those immediately just because pace and acceleration are so important in the league. But also, again, off the ball, making a real presence here at 13. Composure and finishing, both of them 14, both of them really do go hand in hand. So having both at a fairly high level is a really good sign. And that is kind of borne out by the fact that they have scored 8 goals off of just 3.94 XG, more than doubling their XG in just 6 appearances. So this is an absolutely clinical player that Romana are getting. Once again, a very exciting potential pick here. And that is also borne out by rounding the keeper and placing shots. So this player could be absolutely lethal in the goal box.
Yeah, no, I honestly think this is a really, really good pickup. I think a lot of the people that join later in the draft class actually look very promising, and this is another one. I mean, to score 8 goals in 6 games is quite incredible. There's no way to know that they would be able to keep that up for a whole season, but that's certainly incredible. Incredible rate of return. I think their pace and finishing and like their acceleration and all that all really work well together. Um, to I think this would be like a really good advanced forward or a poacher where they kind of use their speed to run past the defenders and collect the a long ball or a through ball, and when they go one on one with the keeper, they can use their pace and dribbling and kind of just quickly go around them and get an easy goal in the empty net.
Certainly a limited sample size, but as you say, what we've seen from that limited sample size is extremely encouraging. The rest of the league, perhaps on notice, Ryota Ando could be a household name before too long.
At pick number 47, we have a pass. Pick number 48, we have another pass. At pick number 49, the first of the 7th round, we have União Sao Paulo selecting Ron Wins, the user 2socks.
Well, we have another central defensive presence. Central defensive midfield is the primary position of this particular player. I do note also the render is absolutely glorious, but certainly a strong defensive anchoring presence there in the midfield, but also will be very important in linking up the defense and attack. As I keep saying, will bring the ball out of the fence and trying to ping those long passes in. And with 13 passes and 15 decisions, you have to think that those passes are going to find the mark pretty often. 15 pace is also pretty helpful in this regard. 11 acceleration means they might not get to that top speed as quickly, but nevertheless, certainly going to be a huge boon for União Sao Paulo to try and link the attack and defense and try and get some attacks and counterattacks going.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this player in the SSL. I think along with like their attributes go really well with their player traits. And I personally prefer this type of defensive midfielder, so I'm excited to see how they do in the league.
Pick number 50, we have Catalonia selecting Apollo Service, the user Aussie.
Well, it's another player that can primarily play in advanced positions. This one is a striker, but can also play at right wing or as a central attacking mid. Physically very strong, a lot of 14s in acceleration and pace, and also strength, which is very nice to see. We'll try to go around the keeper to try and put the shots in the net. And we'll also see them trying a lot of volleys potentially with that tries first time shots pass. Could also be very quick in getting shots away from through balls as well. So will be a player to watch the moment that they come within a shooting distance of the ball. Also very high finishing and dribbling, and of course heading. Should be a pretty interesting attacking threat here for Catalonia. Certainly some deficiencies in the game, but with plenty of time and development, that will, I believe, the strengths more than make up for it.
Yeah, I think kind of what we were going for with this draft was a rebuild in the very literal sense, where we tried to essentially find players for almost every. I'm pretty sure this player would cover every single position. I think we've gotten defenders, we've gotten goalkeepers, we've gotten midfielders, wingers, and now we wanted to draft a striker because we're essentially just trying to rebuild the whole team, because a lot of the players have kind of aged out and are close to retiring or have retired. And we have some really good promising players that just need some teammates to essentially help them reach the next level. So I think this draft is a pretty big draft for our club because a lot of these players are hopefully going to be a part of our team in the future, and it can like this is pretty much, I guess, what our team is hopefully going to look like in the future is a lot of the names that were called here today.
Buenos Aires at pick number 51. Select Okita Colapinto, the user Lemonopi.
Well, this is the point in the draft where this is our first inactive user that has been picked. And so, with that in mind, I would like to point out that with a lot of these inactive players, pretty much every positive thing that we can say here does come with the caveat of if they return to being active. So, for instance, this particular player still has 31 TPE uncommitted and currently does have a very strong first touch. Pretty well rounded, it has to be said. Could potentially be a very intriguing striker here, or attacking presence here for Buenos Aires Atheni if they return to activity. Certainly well positioned to do so with beating the offside trap and trying to play shots. 12 technique will help with that.
Yeah, I mean, they did really, really well in the academy, and like you said, if they do come back, they do still have like, you know, a good build to keep working off of, and still be able to be like a top striker, I think, in the future.
And
I'd also like to point out the player's render, for those not in the know, is actually Mu Deng, who I don't know much about other than the fact that they're a baby hippo, I think. So I figured that was worth mentioning at least.
one of the few animal renders in this draft. It seems like the SSL has, for the past couple of seasons, become a zoo of animals that want to play football. But this draft has only seen a couple: a dog and a some form of rodent, I think there was as well, and then now a hippo.
We did have a turtle.
Oh yes, a turtle, a mutant ninja turtle. That's right.
And then in past seasons, we've seen ducks, we've seen geese, we've seen pumas. It really is turning into a bit of a menagerie, the SSL.
And as you mentioned before, Colapinto is one of the first inactive users, or inactive players rather, that are drafted. And we're getting to the point now where we're seeing the final steps, the final selections of this draft. And we have a pass at pick number 52, and then we have a pick 53 by Tokyo, and they select Benny Blanco, the user Deng.
Well, this does fill a bit of a hole for Tokyo Cairo in the minors at left defender that they were hoping to patch up. Certainly has very strong acceleration and pace, and again, pretty well rounded apart from that. Not a lot of uncommitted TPE, but with the traits of getting forward whenever possible and looking for the pass, could be very helpful in assisting scoring moves from that left wing. And again, if they return to activity, would be very, very much an asset for Tokyo Cairo, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially since, we've said it a lot, but defense is just important. And I think if you can, potentially bring this user back, I actually also think especially wingbacks are like wide defensemen are really important because they kind of contribute to both ends of the pitch. They help you, stop the ball and prevent, conceding goals. But we've had on a couple occasions a wide defender win the MVP. and as well be one of the, if not the top like assist contributors. So I think it's actually a really underrated position because they will be able to contribute on both ends.
Well, as a left defender myself, I will not disagree with left backs or fullbacks in general being very important. But again, I am biased.
Pick 54 is a pass, pick 55 is a pass, and as well pick number 56. And that means we are starting off the 8th round with União São Paulo selecting at 57 overall. Oh, the button doesn't work still. Let's do it manually. Irepsei Imeinaktok, the user Shawnee148.
So this is another player that hasn't actually committed any of their TPE earned apart from the TPE that they allocated when building the player. So again, if the player returns to activity, we'll have a lot to work with to try and boost their attributes. 52, in fact, is the actual number. In the meantime, could be a fairly decent midfield presence. 13 pace is certainly worth noting, as is 13 passing. No huge glaring weaknesses as far as I can tell. So even if this player doesn't return to activity, this could still be a fairly useful piece of this Sao Paulo Paris squad.
Yeah, I think at this point a lot of the picks are players that maybe the user, and you think maybe you can potentially get them to join, or maybe you're just hoping that you see that they had a good idea for a player, and maybe them getting drafted and actually being able to play on a team and play a whole season. I mean, the academy is a really good stepping stone, but some players might be a little antsy and want to play right away, so maybe this can help give that motivation for them to come back.
With 58 overall, we have Catalunya selecting Jinshu Notazuki, the user Pingu.
So a little bit of an SSL history lesson here. Pingu was actually the original manager for Tokyo SC, and as a result, I'd imagine a lot of the older heads in the league are a little surprised that Pingu didn't return to Tokyo and instead is going to Catalonia. I will say this is a very, very strong pick at this stage in the draft for Catalonia. Again, if Pingu returns to activity, but even if he doesn't, 17 acceleration, 15 pace, 15 dribbling and finishing and technique. This is already a very strong finisher, a very lethal threat if he can get into the box. Certainly a really, really powerful presence in this Catalunya Soul attack, regardless of whether Pingu does return to being active or not. Although, obviously, we hope they do, just generally speaking. Does like to beat the onside trap and will play 1-2s. So we'll be very much looking to try and get into those advanced positions. 10 goal contributions from 9 appearances. The fact that Pingu fell this far might put the rest of the league on notice. I think this is a strong pick from Catalonia.
Yeah, to be honest, I really did kind of expect him to go to Tokyo too. And when I knew that wasn't gonna happen, I didn't want them not to join the SSL. I thought, there's too much history here to ignore, and I really think that this could potentially be a huge steal for us because I know they went inactive, but I believe I can potentially get them to join again, and I think having Pingu in the league and having a Nutsa Suki join and be a part of the league would be a huge win for the old heads like myself. Um, and I think it would be really exciting, especially to be able to manage that player and be able to continue this legacy.
For what it's worth, while I do have the opportunity, I do want to speak to this a little bit to sort of explain why Tokyo didn't end up taking him. It was on the table for a while to potentially take Pingu. I remember I had brought up the idea, and ultimately it just ended up not being the direction that we wanted to go. But that is certainly not out of disrespect to Pingu uh, at all. It just ended up not being the fit that we were after. But certainly, as I say, really do hope that Pingu does come back because of being a such a legacy user of this league. So hopefully Pingu does come back, and if they do, then this is going to be a very very dangerous pick from Catalunya in a good way. Very dangerous for everyone else, I mean.
Yeah. Two selections left. At pick number 59, the second to last selection in this season's prospect draft, we see Buenos Aires picking up Sweeper the Keeper, the user MaxBoy.
Well, I believe this is the fourth keeper on the board, and I believe that will be the final keeper in this class. Once again, has gone inactive. Something that I note is with a little bit of amusement, the highest attribute in this player's build is eccentricity, which I mean fits for a player that is very clearly a sweeper keeper. Uh, Eccentricity is essentially, in broad strokes, and Omni might want to fill in the blanks here, but in broad strokes, it's the tendency of the keeper to roam from goal to try and basically run out and try and take control of the play. It's a lot better for a sweeper keeper who is going to be making those runs anyway, whereas for a traditional stay-at-home goalkeeper, lower eccentricity is usually better. Nevertheless, apart from that, strong reflexes and does have that tendency to rush out at 15, which pairs very well with the high eccentricity and the general role that this player will be expected to play. So it'll be very interesting to see how this player grows if they return to activity.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a pretty good way of putting it. It's kind of like, I mean, I know the flair exists for goalies, but it's kind of like flair for goalies. But yeah, this player looks definitely like a sweeper keeper. And I think actually it would be really exciting if they came back because personally those are my favorite type of goalies. And I know that they would do well if they came back, and it would just be exciting to see, to be honest. So hopefully they do return, and I think Athenai in Buenos Aires would benefit from it.
And with the final selection in this prospect draft, we have Sao Paulo making their final selection at pick number 65, the first of the 9th round. Oh, skip that one. Leandro Dybala, the user Honored Mexican.
Well, it's the last pick of the draft, but honestly, it's not a bad pick either. This is another player that plays as an attacking midfielder and will be looking to do some flashy stuff on the ball. 13 flair as well as 15 technique. Going to be very exciting to watch this player play. Playing 1-2s and trying killer balls means that they're going to be contributing theoretically to a lot of goals. Didn't really accomplish that too much in academy play. No goal contributions, only 1.45 xg, 0.8 xa, and a fairly low average rating, it has to be said. But that was in limited action, so there's only so much that we could glean from that. Certainly going to be, certainly could have their moments in aiding Sao Paulo Paris, and with 46 bank TPE, might have a little bit of extra to invest if, say it with me class, they come back from inactivity. Very good. But yes, I think this is a very, very interesting pick, and I think again, if they come back from inactivity, could look a lot better on paper than it already does.
Yeah, it's kind of the story at this point where people are picking up inactives. I really, really like the dribbling passing technique at 15. It's my kind of midfielder. And to be honest, I love Dybala in real life, so I think it would be really cool to see them rejoin the league. Because I personally would be really excited to see how this player would look if they were to continue to develop them.
And with that, we have finished the S18 Prospect Draft. It took a while, but we also had the one of the biggest classes that we've ever had in the league history, and I think we managed to, what did we say, 53 picks in total to go through here now on 2.5 hours. Any final thoughts from either of you before we sign off?
Well, I do want to point out that we had a couple of teams that really stocked up on players this draft. I want to shout out AC Romana and a CF Catalonia with 10 picks apiece, really revamping those rosters. União Sao Paulo not far behind with 9 selections in this draft. So teams really building through the draft. You love to see it. Certainly an exciting time for the league as we see all of these new players that all seem very excited, very invigorated, will be looking to make their mark in the SSL. I think we're going to be looking at this class in the next few seasons as potentially a turning point for the league where the matches just keep getting better, the teams just keep getting better, and so many players will be interested in continuing to grow and develop. I think this has the potential to be a real, if you'll pardon the use of the term, a real golden generation for the league. So best of luck to everybody here. I think we've got a lot of very interesting player and organization matches, a few surprises as well, but I think overall, pretty much every team that made a selection today is in a good spot based on these selections.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally really excited. I, I joined season 1 and I left, I believe, in season 15. I think was my last season. So not like a huge break, but a lot actually has changed since I left. The portal didn't exist, and I think it's really exciting time to join. I was honestly just kind of curious and poking my head in, and when I saw how many people were joining and stuff, it made me want to rejoin too. So yeah, I'm really excited for this draft class, because it feels like I've joined like 2 like huge historic. I've been a part of the 2 biggest draft classes now, so yeah, I think I'm really excited to see where everyone is. And last time I joined, like, pretty much I wasn't the first, but I joined like the first week. So this time I joined kind of late, and it was really exciting for me to see how many people were already there and like how much hype there already was. And also too, like, I used to be a academy coach, and at the time it was like, I don't know, it wasn't as big as it was this season, so it was cool to see the academy used to its full advantage. And I didn't think going in that I was really gonna care about the academy. I thought I was just gonna create my player and follow along the major and minor league. But I ended up being really invested in the academy league and all the players on my team, most of which, we ended up spreading around to all the different teams, which is, kind of sad, but exciting too. So I think this is going to be a really exciting season for the minors, especially because the minors is now going to be full of like a lot of active players. And I personally think this is like really what the league needed. So yeah, I think this is going to be really exciting to see how this all pans out in the next, like, 4, 5, 6 seasons, and where everyone ends up. And um yeah, I think it'll be one of those things that people maybe will do one of their seasonal bounties, 10 seasons from now or something, when all of our players are starting to regress or something. And yeah, so very excited for this, and I hope everyone is excited for all their new teams.
And if you want to join, if you just stumble upon this video and want to join the league as well, we have a new draft class starting up tomorrow on Monday, the 18th of November. So join with the links in the description. It's the first time I've actually said that in a YouTube video. But you can sign up on the forum and create your player in the SSL portal. We have some tutorial videos that introduce you to the first steps that you can take there. But the S19 draft class will start up tomorrow. So definitely going to be an interesting and exciting season to come. And then we have the World Simulation Football Classic that will bridge the season 18 to season 19 in January, which is the international tournament of the SSL. So much to look forward to. And with that, we're going to bid you farewell and good luck in the next season to all drafted players and all old players.
Indeed, and thank you as well to everyone who watched. Yeah, it's honestly pretty incredible to always be able to do this. Like every single draft, I'm blown away by just how into the draft people are getting. Like being able to follow along on the Discord and reacting to all the picks. I just wanted to shout out the people in the SSL Discord who have been following this along. You guys are great, and it's really rewarding to be able to do this. So, yeah, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I kind of said everything I want to say. I'm really excited for this season, and I wish everyone the best of luck.
And with that, we're gonna end the stream.
Thanks for watching, everyone.